Let me just say a couple things. This is, after all, a regular YSI project. If you don't know what that means, it means everybody on this project is doing this because they're interested in the topic. First of all, the research topic and the research questions posed by the project, and that we're all volunteers, basically volunteering our time. And that even in my case, who I'm one of the few people in the community that are in a position. I'm doing this also because I'm interested in the topic, not because I have a lot of special extra attention that I can give to a particular YSI project. We currently have 120 projects in YSI, so this one strikes my interest a lot and is close to my personal interest. So everybody here is a volunteer, and we all welcome your contributions and your interests, and we, as most YSI projects, we hope to advance our individual research by collaborating and entering this shared space together. And over the Q&A here, we kind of want to outline quickly the broad idea of the project, and there's two big dimensions. And there's a special institutional setting which we're putting this project into. And by the end of our Q&A, we hope that we've convinced you that it's worthwhile for you to join, and we'd like to learn more about why you might be interested in the Liquidity project. So let me just quickly start with the high level, and then I'll hand it over to Kiko to give a quick overview of the specifics that are upcoming over the next months. And after we do that, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you and what you're interested in, your questions, and then we can hopefully within the hour wrap up the session, because that's also when I have to leave, but we don't want to overburden you too much with a lot of information. There's a lot more to come, and we can be in touch over the next weeks and months on the specifics of the project. So does that sound like a good agenda to everybody? All right, thumbs up if you agree. With that, let me just quickly outline in broad strokes what the idea of the project is, and why the project sort of emerged. And Kiko will go into this in more depth, but Kiko and I have been attending various, or been part of various projects in the past, in particular project by the Financial and Economics Working Group, where they attended a conference by Katerina Pistoa, who's a Columbia professor who wrote a book, wrote a paper called, what's the exact title of that famous paper that she wrote? A Legal Theory of Finance, I think is the title. A Legal Theory of Finance.
Katerina Pistoa.
Exactly, and that was she basically, around this paper, she started. She had a grant from Minet, and she also was building a major research group, and there was a conference that I was invited to attend to. Was a really great conference, and at this conference, this was 2014, I believe, we met as a working group, Robert Steigerwald, who is a very senior figure at the Chicago Fed. And thanks to Kiko, who's been keeping this relationship alive for the last couple of years, we've been able to rehash that relationship and now build this new project on this relationship that we've had. And that's why we've already had a meeting. We've been already as a working group, and as the Financial and Economics Working Group and Financial Stability Working Group, been invited to a past conference at the Chicago Fed that we attended not so long ago. And we will be continuing to be invited to actually closed-door Chatham House Rules conference by the Chicago Fed that they're hosting around the world. The next one that we're invited to is in Chicago in October. And they are quite interested in us because they are dealing with a lot of new questions around the specifics of designing regulation and the institutional setup and financial market infrastructure for clearinghouses that have now emerged as a go-to tool after the financial crisis, and they're still figuring out a lot of specifics. They have a big problem though, which is there's not much research on it. There's not many scholars, or there's not much high-level thinking on these questions, and there's not many young people they can plug into these situations to sort of think through. They are having trouble hiring staff. they have trouble finding good research. So they were naturally interested in us as a group of young scholars who are really pushing the envelope and thinking through new questions and bringing multiple perspectives to a particular problem. In particular, Perry Maryland's money view framework, which is related to Katrina Pistor's legal theory of finance. They're very interconnected. Katrina Pistor basically uses a hierarchy of contracts in the financial system based on Perry's money view, which is the hierarchy of money. And Perry puts a huge emphasis on liquidity and balance sheet analysis, which really attracted Robert Steigerwald to the project. So we have Perry and Robert Steigerwald in the background having a conversation at a high level about what are the intellectual contributions that need to be made going forward on the specifics of CCPs. And for us as YSI, we're not just interested in this particular problem that the Chicago Fed is facing at the moment. For us, it's embedded in a broader issue that liquidity itself is not fully developed as a framework from an academic analytical perspective. And we would like to use this particular special instance of liquidity in CCP arrangements as a starting point for us to think through liquidity as a broad analytical basket of problems that we need to think through across the whole financial system. And that is liquidity versus solvency. Most economists do not have a strong understanding or differentiation between solvency and liquidity because of the frameworks we apply to these problems. And we would like to put a special emphasis on liquidity issues. So the Liquidity Project does exactly this. We want to, in this project, gather a wide range of senior and junior scholars interested and focused on liquidity issues in the financial system, but now start in the first instance with our cooperation with the Chicago Fed, and over the next year and a half, attend various conferences and develop a deeper understanding of the issues that are posed by the regulators and by the institutional players. We have direct access to the source, and we'd like to build along that dimension. But we'd also like to open the dimension to anybody else interested in various issues. We find liquidity issues across the spectrum, and that is a two-way street to sort of broaden the project, but also explore deeply the relationship that we have now on clearinghouses. So with that, I'll just leave it to Kiko to sort of delve a little deeper into what's going to happen over the next months and how we hope you might join this project specifically. And we'll take your questions and who you are and why you're interested after Kiko presents. Kiko.
Thank you, Jay, and welcome everyone. It's exciting to see you on the call and giving Jay and myself a chance to present this to you. So can you just confirm that you can see the PDF that I'm sharing right now? If you can? Okay, great, thank you. So I'm gonna go in on the first page. Some of you might have had a chance already to look at it. And so this is sort of our testimonial page. All the people you see on this page, from Perry, who most of you know, Michael Beale, who works at the Fed in DC, the Board of Governors, Jay, and myself, we all are sort of committed in doing research in this space. Specifically, Perry and Michael, Perry plus potentially Michael, together with the mentioned Robert Steigerwald, are sort of on track to do research, and there's more on that to dig into. There is recorded video conferences. There's minutes on this if you wanted to understand more about their work and the status they're in. But also Jay and myself are sort of getting ready to do some sort of research. And the reason is, so why are we doing this? Before I answer the question on why I'm doing this, on the right-hand side, you sort of see, as Jay was framing liquidity problems in the entire financial system, this subsect of questions around liquidity are sort of in financial market infrastructure, which is shortly abbreviated FMI. And the constituents of these FMI are sort of these five, from exchanges to payment system, But right now, the one we're focusing on is sort of the clearing and settling part of the financial market infrastructure. Okay, so why are from Perry down the row all the way to myself? Why are we interested in this space? And to try help answer these questions, so you see what's the situation right now. In the upper left-hand corner, you see that in 2009, coming right out of the financial crisis in 2007 and 2008, there has been sort of the pressure by policymakers and regulators to do something. And you know, some of you, if not all of you, will remember how Lehman Brothers went down, and all their contracts that have all the derivatives contracts, which have gone through central counterparty clearinghouses, in short CCPs, had no problem. These markets that were centrally cleared had no problems whatsoever. It were all the derivatives contracts which went not through CCPs that sort of provide the problems. And there was sort of a thinking out of that, and probably there were other reasons for that too, that we now should do all the so-called clearing mandate was devised in Pittsburgh. There was a G20 meeting, and they sort of put down as a quasi law that all standardized derivatives products should now go through CCPs where appropriate, so leaving a small door open. That doesn't say that this was actually necessarily a good idea, but sort of when we talk about liquidity problems in financial market infrastructure, specifically now in CCPs for derivatives markets, that's just something which we're facing with. The second thing, sort of on the upper right-hand corner, out of a consequence, means is that policymakers and regulators decided that what was before an over-the-counter market, mostly an over-the-counter markets, where the big players, like say for example, JP Morgan and Bank of America, were doing their derivatives contracts among each other, it's now going to be moved to a more, and this was sort of opaque, it's going to move more to a transparent central node system, where now you could regulate the CCP and therefore have a better overview of derivatives markets. On the lower left-hand corner, you see sort of, okay, what are we talking about in terms of markets? So the global derivatives market at the end of 2018 had a notional value of north of 500 trillion US dollars. And you can see that most of it is interest rate swaps, followed by foreign exchange swaps. And so almost 10 years after this clearing mandate, you see that it's just shy of 2/3 of all these derivatives are cleared today. And it's sort of common wisdom that, moving to the lower right-hand corner, that most of these contracts is just a handful of clearinghouses worldwide who are doing actually these clearing services. So these logos, when you see like CME Group, ICE, which is the owner of the New York Stock Exchange, Eurex, which is owned by Deutsche Börse, and London Clearinghouse by the London Stock Exchange and Hong Kong Exchange. These are sort of the biggest five, and there's maybe 1-2 others, but then you mostly have around 80% of, that's sort of a guesstimate of derivatives cleared contracts of companies who actually do the clearing. So that's the situation we're in, we're faced right now. So what's the problem? The problem is that we don't really have a conceptual understanding on how to deal with a clearinghouse which is going down. There is sort of not a budget moment for CCPs. So on the left-hand corner, you see that the concentration of risk as it has been decided by the G20 in 2009 is sort of upping the ante. Because CCPs are marked, is known that they are systemically important, which is just another language for they're too important to fail. So they cannot fail. You see in the United States, 5 have been marked as systemically important. In the European Union, around 10 CCPs. China is pending, but that's sort of the area. So moving into the middle, so another sort of direct problem of that is that CCP regulation starting point often is bank regulation. But CCPs are fundamentally no bank. Those of you who know CCPs know this by heart. Those of you who are now starting or wanting to start learning about CCPs, you can't be thinking about something being farther away from a bank than a CCP. A bank is a transmission mechanism. If you take a balance balance sheet from liabilities short-term into assets long-term. A CCP is completely matchbook. There's none of that. There's a paper by Robert Cox and Robert Steigerwald called A CCP is a CCP is a CCP that talks about this. On Facebook, within the Financial Stability Facebook page, I've posted the link to this paper. It's an easy read. I think it's around 9 or 10 pages. It's more policy paper, so it's easy to digest, but it clearly lines out why CCPs are so different than banks. But nonetheless, regulations starting point, when to think of it, has been usually how banks, the too big to fail banks, have been regulated. So to sum it up, on the right-hand side, you see Badgett's mantra for banking crises has been sort of this: lend freely at a high interest rate against good collateral. But what is it going to be for CCPs? Okay, well, then moving it on to the solution of it, and I guess we are the solution. That is sort of the WISE-I liquidity project, financial market infrastructure. Sort of where we're gonna. So what is the bigger picture? Not the bigger picture. The frame we would be moving in. So you can see here on the left side, you have the public interest, which are policymakers and regulators who sort of own that problem and who have a lot of institutional knowledge. You see the private interest in the green circle here, which are the CCPs themselves. So some of them are listed companies who are sort of have their own interest in themselves. And then you have the clearing members, which are sort of the big banks, for JP Morgan again, Bank of America, and many others, who sort of are the other part of the private interest. And then there's us, which we are the independent thinkers. And where these sort of now figuratively intersect is where the meaningful research is taking place, because we have to sort of take into consideration both the public and the private interest to make a meaningful difference. So on the right-hand side, to put that to the point, is we have a chance to directly interact with public and private interest practitioners. The mentioned Robert Steigerwald is one. Sunil Catino, who is CME clearing president. He's also on the board of the CME group, who is lined up to talk to us in a webinar. So we have interaction with both the public and private interest in preparation to an October conference. Number two, we will also be able to engage now. This is now the red circle with thinkers, with independent thinkers. As mentioned before, Perry is on, Michael is, I think, on, and then some others. There's Basil Sansom, who is sort of a researcher at the University of Warwick, who has done some research, who is very much in the topic, and there's many others. These two are just to represent the wider group. So meaning, if I put myself in your shoes and you think, okay, is it meaningful? Hopefully we showed you that. Other comrades, we can join people, we can join, and there are both on sort of the problem owners and interest owners, but also within the academic field. So participating in CCP conferences, that's mostly done through the Fed Chicago, who would sort of have around the globe a system of every year being in the United States, in Chicago, in Europe, in Frankfurt, or in China, Shanghai, Beijing. And there's always politics if they sort of happen or not, but so we are able to participate in these conversations, and we will be there for meeting the academics, policymakers, regulators, and the private interests as well. There's more to come. That's just sort of now logistics, going into details, but maybe on the input side, I'll give, I'm wondering, I give a chance to, if there are any questions so far. If there are none, I don't know if there are.
Well, maybe Kiko's, Jay, again, let's hear from everybody why they're potentially interested before we get into the actual logistics of the webinar series and the conference is coming up. That gives us a chance to maybe engage the logistics conversation in a different way than we would just rattle it down. Or do you want to just quickly outline what you're expecting to come very quickly, and then we can get into more detail once we hear from everybody?
Yeah, that's fine with me. What do you want me to do?
So maybe if there's interest from everybody, just to quickly, let's go through the room and hear maybe very briefly what attracted you to come to this Q&A today, what attracts you to the Liquidity project, and then we can sort of work through maybe in the discussion that Kiko and I have already planned things for the next months, but we can then brainstorm with you even now how you could even participate in the things that are already planned, or potentially contribute to something that is a part of the project dimension that we haven't thought about yet. So maybe very briefly, Kiko, to start this off, maybe just briefly talk about the webinar series, what's planned for the webinar series, and what is planned for the Chicago conference.
Yeah, I'll finish the presentation. I just want to give people a chance if they had sort of questions. Yeah, I briefly, let me put this here. Okay, so this is sort of the schedule, the preliminary schedule that we put up so far. You see that there's a preparation for a Fed Chicago, the mentioned Fed Chicago conference. Actually, it's going to be a wraparound. Will be a WISE-I Liquidity project conference, and then that's the first upper half, and then you see in the lower half sort of the conference application process. So on the bigger upper half, so to say, there's sort of two sub-segments that we have brought up. One, there's been past resources. Obviously, there have been past conferences as well, but there's now past resources. There's a sort of a CCP 101, I call it, sort of an introduction to CCPs, which is sort of a past webinar. If you click on that presentation, you see the link, you can click on it. It's also on the WISE, it is on WISE-D. You can also find it without clicking on it. It's called the Frankfurt Debrief. But within it, Basil really gives a very nice summary of what is CCP in more detail is and how they work and what makes them so special. I think it's around 40 minutes, and it also covers the debrief. That's a nice introduction. The mentioned ACCP is ACCP paper by Robert. You can find it by just typing it in on Google, and you'll find it on the website of the Fed Chicago. Again, 8-9 pages. I'd probably recommend these two as a start if you were interested in learning more about the CCPs. In terms of upcoming events, so we're going to have today and then on Wednesday another Q&A, and then we're going to go into summer break. In the meantime, Jay and I will put out the paper details for there's going to be these two interactions, one with Robert Steigerwald, public interest, one with Sunil Catino, CME, sort of Robert's from the Fed Chicago, Sunil from CME Group. We're going to put that out in WISE-I and on WISE-D for people to sort of read the papers that are recommended for these webinars. And that's how it's going to work. So the first two ones is sort of CCP fundamentals. So it's going to be 2 papers and 2 background papers proposed by us to read. And then we're going to have a webinar in sort of end of August. You see here the 29th. Celine Cheng, she's a coordinator in the Financial Stability Working Group, and Andrew, who is at McGill, they're going to drive this. Webinar. And then we're going to have Robert come on and then kind of have the interaction with him on what he thinks it's really important to take out of his papers in terms of CCP fundamentals. So the second one is going to be on CCP stress cases. We've talked about how they're systemically important, these CCPs, and how they sort of cannot fail. So it might be interesting to look into some of the failings that have occurred in the past. There's around 3, 4 only. And we're going to pick out the Hong Kong 1987 failure, and then the New Zealand 1989 stress situation, which has been sort of a failure, but not formally. And we're going to also put out the papers to read on that and have a debrief then with Sunil on that, who's sort of an expert on this, and he offered to do this. So we're excited about this. Both are exciting people to interact with. So yeah, so that's the preparation for sort of getting up to speed, learning about fundamentals, and also about some of the sort of the papers out there by specific people like Robert and Sunil. So we're now talking towards the whys. It's really sort of on Tuesday, the 29th of October, there is a Fed Chicago conference, just packed with people from private and public interest. It's no press, invitation only, so there's a selected group of people, and it's Chatham House rules, so it's a very, very straight up conversation and exciting to be part of. And what we have decided, Jay and I, is that we're going to use the day before and the day after to sort of make a wrap around it. And the day before, to get sort of, again, interaction with people in this industry, in this public sphere, and prepare ourselves for the Tuesday, but then also do sort of some ideas of research ideas, have that feedback by people in the room, and sort of do a mapping exercise. We'll come to that. I'm jumping ahead of this, but I just wanted to say that's sort of the idea of this. So you can apply, I guess, in any time you want. If you wanted to use the two sort of preparational meetings with interaction with Robert and Sunil, you could do so. And then until September 22nd, sort of after the last meeting with Sunil, have a week to sort of digest it. And until then, that's a Sunday, I believe, Sunday, September 22nd, just shoot over your application, and you'll get the week after feedback, and that gives you around a month's time to do booking for the conference. So, what I forgot to say is that the stress cases, Basil, the mentioned scholar at the University of Warwick, and myself, we're going to take care of that. Okay, so I've pretty much gone through this already ahead of myself. So we're going to meet Sunday in Chicago with a welcome dinner, sort of work ourselves on Monday through Perry's Money View, have others probably, hopefully from the IMF. There's going to be a lady, she's responsible for CCPs at the IMF, address us during a panel with hopefully some others. It's going to be the mapping exercise. Jay is going to lead that. So lots of good stuff on the day before, heading into the conference by the Fed Chicago on Tuesday. And there's going to be a separate agenda on that. And then on Wednesday, maybe be at CME, we're not sure. And then have a debrief. Robert is going to likely address us then. And sort of, that's going to be sort of the wrap on Wednesday. Sort of Monday is going to be also at the Fed Chicago, so they're hosting us. Wednesday, we're going to see if we can or want to do it there, or we're going to be somewhere else. Okay, moving on to your application. I see the, so mention the date. You can send over to my email. Part of your application is your CV, your motivation and fit to the project in maximum 200 words. And then what's going to be beneficial to your application is just put out some ideas. They can be rough, but which you have identified, and say which way you will contribute to them personally. These questions could be around liquidity problems anywhere in the financial system, because this is part of the liquidity problem, a liquidity project overall. So you might like the liquidity project, but it's not an FMI. I'd like to hear from you. Obviously about the CCPs or other FMI liquidity problems that you know or would like to research. And then there might be also within FMI problems, which are not liquidity problems, what you're still interested to us. So just put that in. And I think with that, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. So in fact, I think it's a good idea to now go into it and make just a quick round. So I propose we'll do this in the order of participants who are right now showing here. I'm just going to start by myself and introduce myself and then give everyone else a chance, because I think everyone knows Jay, but I don't. Or Jay, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hope
Then
you
I'll do
see
it after
me.
you.
Great, thank you, Kiko. So I'm in here in New York. I'm one of the managers responsible for the Young Scholars Initiative. So you probably know me from, if you're new to the community, we're the people in the background making sure everything runs for YSI and all our projects are administrated. I'm personally interested in this project because I have an interest in financial history, and I've taken and I've been a TA for Perry's money and banking course that was running on Coursera for 5 runs. And as we said already at the outset, thinking through and having an analytical framework is a central contribution of Perry's framework, which is why I'm generally interested in liquidity issues, which brings me to thinking about money from a liquidity perspective. And I'm interested in building a big community around these issues in general, and I think we need to build this community in 2 dimensions. One, we need to deeply integrate into specific questions like the one that Kiko was outlining on financial market infrastructure and CCPs, use the opportunities that are given to us. We're really privileged in that sense. But these are maybe particular problems that are faced in this particular instance. We need to reinforce this particular effort with a general effort of bringing people in general who have some understanding and some interest in liquidity issues across the board, because there's not that many thinking through these problems and build a whole community around this. So for us, it's an opportunity now to, and this is my personal interest, I'll take care of, in this project, to ensure that we explore liquidity issues across the whole spectrum of the financial system, get as many young scholars and practitioners involved in this project as we can. So I'll help think through and brainstorm with you what your particular interest might be. But I think it's a really, really good exercise to engage with the problems that are right now in front of policymakers and their cries for help in terms of a real analytical framework that they're desperately looking to academics to provide, but it doesn't exist. So it's a really, really important and worthwhile exercise for us to create something actually new and important. And I think that's really why we're here. We need to reinforce this, like I said, in a general sense, but liquidity in general, and then pick our battles in specific instances to go deep, as we're doing in this particular instance on CCPs. So that's my interest, and I'm looking forward to your ideas around this project.
Great, thank you. So I guess I'm next. My name is Kiko. My official formal name is Gerhard Kolter-Herberg. I'm half Latin American, half European, and I have sort of a bachelor and master in the realms of macroeconomics and finance. I'm a part of YSI since Paris class. That was the reason I joined. That was the reason I got to know about this, and that was sort of around fall of 2013. I'm interested in liquidity problems, interested in the financial stability in general. Sort of what drives me is always the question, having this background, how come some areas of the world are better economically developed than others? And I think my contribution when I'm sort of 70 plus or so would be definitely in trying to add financial markets to a development effort at some remote area or something. Because usually there's productivity that people think about when they are developing an area or a group of people, but it's the part that is under research or under focus is sort of the financial part, financial market part of it. So that's sort of my sort of broad motivation. In this specific case, it's just financial market infrastructure. As soon as you dive into this, as soon as you, sorry about that. As soon as you read some of the papers on this, it just becomes so consuming and so interesting because they have such a huge influence on financial markets, these infrastructures. And so I just see it as, I always saw it as an opportunity along my broad goals to have a starting point. And there's right now a lot of open questions in this, even though it's been 10 years since that people have been working on this. So that's just very meaningful to help make something more stable and to learn along the lines of a very interesting area. Okay, that's for me. So I'm gonna, and I'm a member, I guess I'm an organizer in the financial stability working group. So in the order, I'm gonna move it. I think Adam, you would be next, Adam Karani.
Yes, thank you for organizing this Q&A session. It was very useful for me. My name is Adam, I'm from Hungary. I'm a researcher at the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. My background at YSI, that my first event which I attended was in the Budapest conference in 2016. Since then, I had the pleasure and the opportunity to attend many conferences, webinars organized by or sponsored by YSI. Currently, I'm a member of the Financial Stability Working Group, and I'm an organizer at that working group. I'm interested in financial stability in general, but my current research focuses on financial technology. And when I was in Hong Kong and in the United States, I had the privilege to make interviews with the financial, with central bank financial, with the Fed's experts in San Francisco and in Atlanta and in Hong Kong also. So I think that my contribution might be maybe regarding the digital currencies in the liquidity issues. Maybe what might be quite interesting is the Facebook new proposal regarding Facebook's Libra. That's what I'm just thinking about right now. Thank you for the suggestions regarding Fed's paper. I will look them, and I also would like to receive this this presentation, this PDF file, because I'm interested in the link that you showed, and I would like to watch the videos online. I also had the privilege to attend Perry Merling's lectures, and I'm looking forward to the webinars in August and in September. And I hope my application will be selected, because I've never had the chance to attend the Chatham House event, and this will be very inspiring for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Just on the, I think Abigail is next. Just on the presentation. So both the email that Jay sent around had a link to the presentation, and on Facebook, the pointer also had the presentation attached. So if you don't, if you cannot find it, just send me an email and then I can send it over to you.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Abigail. Abigail, would you want to introduce yourself quickly? You're still on mute. I think I can unmute you, if that helps. Abigail? So moving on to Alejandra Salazar. Okay, this goes quickly here. We're going to Carolina, I think, but at least we can see you.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, my name is Carolina. I'm a PhD candidate in network science at Northeastern, and in particular, I study networks of money, so payment systems and the data that comes from payment systems. I've developed a method for studying the flow of money and the network structure of the flow of money through payment systems. So this has gotten me interested in the natural extension of that, which is like, okay, what about many payment systems, and how the, what do you call it, our financial market infrastructure, as you were saying, is more of a network of a system of payment systems.
Okay.
I'm just here because I'm excited to see any movement happening on building a research community around the literal structure of the financial system, and for incorporating incorporating money directly into economics.
Okay. Okay, awesome. I'm just thinking through, when I'm thinking of these three major products within the financial market, sort of money, securities, and derivatives. So you have studied sort of network and money flow through the payment system. That's interesting. We'll see how this goes. That's pretty good. I think what I'll leave it at that. So great. Let's see. Christoph is next.
Okay, good. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Christoph.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, my name is Christoph Becker. I'm professor for financial mathematics at University of Applied Sciences in Darmstadt, which is south of Frankfurt in Germany. I've seen the lectures by Perry, and I was fascinated by them. And now recently I finished the first paper on dealer illiquidity risk, and Perry helped me a lot, gave me very good feedback on that. Now I thought it would be a good idea to move on from dealer banks to CCPs and see how they are related. One thing that I'm particularly interested in, I'm looking for, is what kind of data is available. Because the only thing that I saw at the BIS is data every 6 months or something, which is not good for anything, at least for the models that I want to work with. Yeah, that's me.
Great. Thank you for being here. Moving on to Dario.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Dario Laudati. I'm PhD student in economics at University of Southern California in Los Angeles. Incoming third year. I'm trying to let you see me, but that's it.
Okay, great. Hey, Dario.
Can you see me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Okay. So basically, I'm finishing now my second year here at USC. Right now the paper I'm working on is more on currency contagion, which again is taken from a network perspective, but more on the econometric side. But as other people mentioned before, I also follow the moot course of Perry Merling on liquidity, and I got very much interested in that. In terms of conferences of INET, I only attended the one that was held here in March, and I found it very interesting. I also took, I think, to a couple of people being here in the room today. And yeah, I'm here because I don't know much about CCPs, and I find it very interesting, and I find it very much of a realistic and a real, not realistic, a real problem. And therefore I think that it challenges me a lot in terms of new thinking as well, and I'm finding solutions that are actually needed. And therefore, that's why I'm here to learn and potentially to contribute, I hope, but first of all, to learn. Thank you.
No, it's great. Thank you, Dario. Moving it on to Nicolo.
Hello, hi. Can you see me?
Yes. Hi, Nicolo.
Hi. I'm first year. Well, I ended the first year of the PhD program at St Andrews in Scotland in economics. I worked for 4 years in the city of London for an asset management firms, and over there I saw how much liquidity is important, especially when it dries up. And my research field is all about the liquidity provisions by the People's Bank of China. And I don't know much about CCP, but I'm extremely interested in learning, especially in China. The IMF published, that is a year and a half ago, the financial stability system assessment of the country, and they showed that the CCPs of the country, they're very much interconnected, but they don't really know much about them. So I'm very much interested in researching more on this. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you, Nicolo. Ross.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. So hello everyone, my name is Ross Spence. I'm currently a PhD at Leiden University in the Netherlands. I'm originally from Scotland. My PhD is related to law and economics, particularly the shadow banking sector and the use of collateralized finance transactions. My background is law, but I did a master's in law and economics, and now my PhD is in law and economics too. I also have several years of practical experience in asset management in both Edinburgh and London. So in relation to shadow banking and collateralized finance transactions, I'm particularly looking at the use of collateral and margin, and I've located the risks that are prevalent in the financial sector with those two mechanisms. Essentially things like liquidity spirals, leverage spirals, through the cycle sort of routines, that sort of thing. And I think that this project would be helpful in my research, and I think that I could contribute quite a lot to it as well. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Awesome. Can I just comment on this, Ross? Just to be, I'm not sure how far you are familiar with CCPs, but just two comments. One is there is no rehypothecation in CCPs. So there's some scholars who think there are, or be part of shadow banking. As far as I can tell, and what I've sort of understood, there is CCPs don't really play a role in that because there is no rehypothecation happening. In terms of initial margining, that's, I think, as far as I can understand it, a key point in understanding the derivatives or any market that a CCP is clearing, centrally clearing. It's key, the initial margin that they are putting out. If you think of sort of hierarchies of money, of securities, or of derivatives where you have on the money side, you have maybe a central bank on top of the hierarchy. And on derivatives markets, you probably have the CCP on top of the hierarchy. And whatever their initial margining is how far out or how loose or how strict derivatives in these markets are being able to be paid for, so to say, because it has an influence on the price of these derivatives. So I think that's key, and I just wanted to get this out. That's great.
Yeah, no, I mean, sorry, just to come in quickly. The central question of my PhD is how does margin operate? So I'm trying to look at it from that perspective. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. No, I think that sounds interesting. Okay.
Kiko, can I, since I'm leaving, I just want to quickly say goodbye, and I'm really encouraged by the conversation right now. I have another important meeting that I have to attend, unfortunately. What I would suggest is you keep going, put all the ideas on the table, and we should continue to brainstorm how your specific contributions could be incorporated potentially into a webinar series that we lead, that we also extend the one that Kiko has already organized, and maybe you would like to, for instance, the idea of what to do with Libra. And I think that Libra is a super interesting question for us to engage with on the liquidity question specifically as well. How does it interact with the various payment systems? How does it integrate with the existing infrastructure? How can it stand by itself? These are all important questions, and this might allow us all to get to know each other by us proposing maybe a general webinar where you take ownership over one particular aspect that you'd like to take over in terms of a general liquidity webinar series, and then we can sort of from there take it further. So maybe make sure that Kiko has all your email addresses, send him an email after the fact, so we're able to follow up with you directly. So for now, thanks for coming, and I'll sign off. Kiko will keep going with you.
Well, I have a meeting now too, but thank you, Jay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I can only say I've enjoyed the run. I think, Song, I think you just joined. I don't know if you can hear us. wrapping it up, I would also wrap it up. I enjoyed every interest in what you have put out so far. I encourage you to indeed reach out to me and just send me an email, and I make a record of that you participated, and if there's a new sort of that I can building up a listserv. So my email address is in the presentation, gerhard@cultureherberg.com, for sort of if you want to recognize it. What I recognize is in the next days, after Wednesday sometime, we're going to put out the papers for the 2 already planned webinars after the summer break. There's so plenty of time to get into them. I definitely recommend, let me start again. I definitely recommend looking at the Basil's webinar, which is just something you can listen, or there's a presentation which you can just follow online, and look up the CCP paper. If you can't find it, put it in your email to me and I'll just reply and send it to you. I think these 2 things are just extremely easy starting points to get right into the topic. And then in a few days or so, within the next week or so, you'll see the papers recommended for the webinars in September. And just, it's not too much reading, just get into them. It's going to be great conversation with both the public and private interest. And then from there on, it's going to be Chicago. There are spaces that are out there we can align, and there's sort of, as long as we can demonstrate that there's interesting profiles and interesting ideas, we'll be sure to accommodate a lot of applications. But I think since this is a first official working with Fed Chicago, it just needs to be quality in both the track record and the ideas. But I think I'm hopeful. There was all of it. I thought was sort of showed that quality, and I think now I take maybe if there's any questions, you can raise them now. Otherwise, send me an email, put you on the listserv, look up and just carry on. Any questions? Good. So thank you, everybody.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Christoph.
One thing. The research that Perry is doing on CCPs, where can I find it?
Yeah, because it's not done yet, you cannot
okay.
sort of say. No, but I think, no, something else. There is a video conference between him and Robert, and there's minutes on this, a 7-page protocol, minutes on that. That will also be made available to interested parties. There's a Dropbox where this is lying right now. So just shoot me an email. All of you shoot me an email. Just mention you're interested in that, and I get you access to it. But I would just want to hold the horses there, is like, because I think number one, understanding the CCP past events, sort of the understanding of CCPs in general, and 2, preparing for these 2 September webinars, I think are sort of are more important than understanding what Perry is doing, because they're setting right out just the framework, and they will meet in Chicago actually. So this is hasn't even officially started. Just discussed broadly what. So I think I'm actually going to hold off on this a little bit, because I think it's getting us ahead of what's required to be part of this conversation.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, thank you, and I'll be in touch with you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Carolina. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, bye. Bye, Ross.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Nicolo, Dario. Thanks for having me.